So in a previous video on this channel, I went through my Ableton 2021 template, and one plugin that I added to it from the previous year is a plugin that got a whole load of questions straight after it. That is XLN Audio's XO. Now, this is a plugin that's not exactly new, but it's certainly new to my toolbox. And as soon as I got my head around it, honestly, I loved it and it hasn't left my project. It's in every project. It's how I start my beats. And a few of you asked me about my workflow and how I use it. So that's what I thought I'd cover in today's video. So this is XO by XLN Audio, and it's a drum sequencer. Now, it's not new at all. It's been out for, I think, a couple of years now. And it's one of those things that I tried out and I didn't quite get straight away. But once I kind of play with it a bit more, I realized how great it was, because it's not just a normal drum sequencer. The whole sample browser within it is just amazing. And I have my own little template that I've got set up within my Ableton template. So you can see within my template here, my Ableton template, I've got my drums group, and inside that I've got a kick and all my tops, so my claps, my hats, and then a few audio layers ready for my tops. But my claps, my hats, and my kick are all driven by XO, which I've got on this MIDI channel just here. Now, I've got a little bit more of a complex setup, but I'll talk you through it and you'll kind of hopefully understand where I'm coming from with it. Now, I'm actually going to set this back into its init preset, which is just at the top of the list here. And you'll be able to see this is how it comes normally with nothing in here at all. Now, down the left-hand side here is where you load all your samples in. And this is really the genius part. It's actually finding the samples within here. So we've got a kick layer here. I'm going to click on this little dot here, and it will take me to this like scatter diagram of all these little colored dots. Every single one of these colored dots is a sample on your hard drive, and they're color coded into different sounds. So for example, the red, that's all of your kicks. The green and the yellows, these are your hats. Then you've got the pinks here, which are kind of your claps. And then in the middle here, you've got kind of percussion. All of these little dots represent a one-shot sample on your hard drive. And when you first start using this, you can actually set up folders for your hard drive. So for example, here, I have a whole load of folders on my hard drive containing all my samples. So for example, I've got my splice folder here. I've got my samples folder here. I've got a whole load of different ones here. And every time you add a new sample to it, it can refresh and it will get the latest sample. So for example, if I click this, it's going to go through my hard drive and it's going to find all the one-shot samples. It's going to ignore all the loops. It just looks for one-shot samples. And it actually analyzes every single sample and kind of identifies whether it's a kick or a clap or anything else like that. So let's go back into the kick again. If I click on this little button here, as I say, we can see all these different samples here. And what I can do is I can click with my mouse and then drag and preview any of the kicks within here. So you can literally find all the kicks on your hard drive as quick as that, and auditioning them is so quick, and that's one of the things I love about it. But if I zoom in, which you can do with the scroll wheel, you can actually see just how many samples I've got here. And when you find a sample that you like, what you can do is you can then use the arrow keys on your keyboard to find samples that sound just like that. So we're using the sample that we just found as our starting point, and then you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to find kicks that sound like it. So you can see there, as I was clicking the arrow key, it was kind of looking at all the samples that are around the original sample that we found. That's because when it's laying all these dots out, it's not just laying them out randomly, it's kind of in relation to each other. So samples that sound similar to each other. So when you're kind of in a certain area on this kind of map almost, that the samples do sound similar. And by using the arrow keys, you can have a look at ones that are just slightly different. And then when you find the sample that you like, you hit the little tick mark here, and that'll just confirm it. And then we can see we now have that sample in here. And if I go along to the right here, this is the sequencer within here, a standard sequencer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 4/4 kick in there. Now this isn't going to do anything just yet. I need to set up host sync, make sure host sync is on. That's on. Now if I press play within my DAW, that'll then play that kick back. So I've got that kick within there now. Let's add a clap. I'm going to do exactly the same thing within here. I'm just going to zoom out. Let's have a look at our claps. Zoom in a bit more. So I think that one's going to work. What I'm going to do is, without actually even confirming it, I can actually use the sequencer at the bottom here to put those claps in. So I've now got a kick and a clap in there, but if I don't like that clap, I can actually audition different samples over the top of it by pressing that arrow key. So I quite like that sample, that's quite cool. If I click on the check mark, I can then find a hi-hat, for example. So let's go into the open hi-hat channel here. I'm going to find a sample within here. Let's go and find the open hi-hats. I think they're over here, they're in green. If you're not quite sure which sample is which, you can actually go to the little magnifying glass here, and you can actually filter by certain samples. So for example, I can filter by open hi-hat. I can then filter by main frequency. So you have the lower frequencies here and the upper frequencies here. So say for example, I want to just look for upper frequencies. I want to look for something that's quite high. You can also filter by length as well. So if you want a shorter hat, you can do. And then drumminess. I'm not actually sure what drumminess means, but I like the word. And then you can also narrow it down by the different sample folders you've got. So for example, I'm not that too keen on the core content that comes with the XO, but I'm going to look at these 3 folders on my hard drive. So you can now see that it's actually just narrowed it down by that. So I'll close that filter down, and then let's add an open hat on the upbeat. So I quite like that hat, that's really kind of cool. Let's click OK on that one. Now there's a whole load of other controls within here. For example, we got the little waveform here. If I click on this, we can actually trim down that hat if we want to. We've also got controls for the envelope here if we want to. So if you don't want to edit it here, you can actually use the decay instead. We've then got pitch as well. And then we also got a high cut and a low cut. Now, one of the things I do love about this is there is a global swing on here as well, but you can also add swing to every single layer as well. So I'm going to put a bit of global swing on here, and actually put a couple of 16th notes in there as well. Just give it a little bit of swing. Let's have a look. You can see the notes within here. You can actually adjust the velocity by clicking and scrolling up or down. So as you can see, it's dead easy to get a beat going with this, but one of my favorite things about it is that at any point you can just swap out that kick, for example. If it's not working within your track, you can then just swap it out really quickly and find something that does work. So I've got my hat and my clap and I've got my kick going, but I'm not too keen on that kick. I can always swap that out whenever I want to. And that's why I like XO so much, because when I'm in that kind of loop kind of phase, I'm finding all the elements for my track and I'm still just constructing everything in a loop. I can have everything, all my drums inside of XO. And then if I need to, I can just switch out that kick really quickly, audition another one, see if that works. Same with the hat, same with the clap, same with any of the percussions that I put in with this. Now I do have a kind of weird little routing thing going on here, because usually this would all be coming out of one channel. So we've got the XO channel here. It would all be coming out of this XO channel. However, the way I've got it routed up is that I like all my claps and my hats in a tops group. That's how I always work. So I've got a clap channel here and I've got a hats channel here. Now what I've actually done is I've actually got the input coming from XO into the clap channel and into the hat channel. So we can see here, I've got XO, I've got it coming out of XO and I've got it coming in from bus 2 of XO. So XO actually has multiple outputs. If I go into XO here, you can see that the clap here, if I click on this little button here, we can see the output is going to bus 2. And I've got my hi-hats here, they're going out to bus 3. So this means you can actually have multiple outputs out of XO and put them into different channels. Now this helps me get a kind of feel for, you know, kind of the beats and how I want to mix them, because on these channels, on these individual channels here, I can put whatever EQ I want onto them. So before I even start like making the track and bouncing any audio, I'm kind of getting the sounds exactly how I want to. So once I've built my whole loop up, I've got everything all ready to go and I'm ready to start arranging. How do I get my samples out of XO and start using them as audio within my DAW? Well, it's a little bit more complex, obviously, because of the way I've set this up. If I go to the export button here, I can click render WAVs, and what this will do is it will render out every single channel. Now, the only problem is when you're actually outputting it to multiple buses, when you render these, they render as silent, which is a real pain. So what I actually got to do is I've got to go through each one of these channels and put them back to the master. So each one of these that were previously on a different bus, I've got to put them out to the master. And then what I can do is I can go to the export again, render them again, and you can see now I actually have the samples. And what I can do is I can just very simply drag and drop these onto the channel. So I've got the hat here. I can just drag and drop that onto the hat channel here. I've got the clap here. I can drag and drop that onto the clap channel. And then the kick within here, I'm going to drag and drop the kick onto that channel there. And then I can just close XO and I'll just mute it as well. I need to make sure that the input is set to off. And now I've got these loops ready to go. Now, most of the time I will bounce it out of XO as audio, but sometimes it's nice to keep it as MIDI. And you can do that with XO as well. So for example, I'm going to delete this kick channel. I'm going to add a new MIDI channel within here. And let's do a simpler on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to XO and I am actually going to select that MIDI channel. And then what I can do is I can actually drag and drop the individual one-shot sample into there. And I can also drag and drop the MIDI in here as well. Now, of course, that MIDI isn't going to be right for the simpler. So I'm going to get rid of the notes in here that I don't need, keeping the kick. And actually this simpler is always at C3. So I'm going to knock that up 2 octaves. And now we got the kick. And that's really the basics of how I use XO within my workflow. I mean, generally, obviously, then I come up with all the other layers around that, and I might even put some percussion top loops over the top of it as well. But generally, I'll keep everything in XO until I'm ready to start arranging, because I want to make sure that obviously everything is sitting right. But the main advantage of having XO providing all the beats is that I can swap out any of those samples at any point and audition them really quickly. As great as Ableton is, it's not quite as great as auditioning hundreds and hundreds of kicks or claps or whatever else like that, whereas XO has got an amazing interface for that, and it's one of those things that I've found so useful and so quick and easy to go to whenever I need to make those little tweaks here and there.
Right now, I'm gonna bring it back to the funk.